What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Mcreator tutorial on this channel, and today we're going to be covering how you can add your own custom trees into your mod. Now, custom trees have a lot of stuff that goes with them, and hopefully this guide covers absolutely everything you need to know to get your trees implemented and working properly. Now, I am sitting here in a brand new workspace, as we usually do for our tutorials, but before we start anything, I do want to go ahead and say that we now have an official Discord server for my community. Now, this is a general community Discord server, but the majority of the people in there are fellow Mcreator modders, just like you and I. So if you have any sort of questions, comments, concerns, you want to get help or feedback on your mod, or you just want to share the work you've been doing or see the work other people have been doing, I highly recommend that you join this Discord server. It is in the description down below. But without further ado, let's hop into it. Now, with today's guide, because it's going to be so in-depth, I'm hopefully going to put some timestamps up on the screen right about now that kind of covers the different sections of this in-depth guide and everything that you need to know. So if you are here for a specific part, you can skip around, but loosely what we're going to be covering is how you can make your own custom wood type and leaves, as well as saplings, how you can then make those leaves be dropped by shears and then drop sticks, apples, whatever you want them to drop, how you can make logs that are strippable, how you can use the built-in tree generators in Minecraft, and even if you want to, how you can make your own custom tree structures that spawn. Although I will go ahead and warn you that this is not how Mcreator wants you to make trees, so if you're going to go this route, you will have extra code that you need to add, and honestly, you will probably still run into bugs that you may simply just have to accept. But without further ado, let's hop in at step 1, which is making your own custom wood set. Now, luckily Mcreator makes this incredibly easy because there are some handy dandy tools up here that allow you to make simple sets incredibly quickly. If you just come up here to the tools tab and click on it, you then have the option to create a wood pack. And if you select your wood pack, you can name your wood. Here we're going to call it Mythic Wood, just because I think that sounds pretty cool. And then we're going to pick a default color for it. Now, this is the color selector in Mcreator. This probably looks pretty familiar to you, but we're going to kind of just pick, I don't know, say like this light kind of pastel purpley color that all of our wood is kind of going to be in the theme of. Now, the wood pack power factor is going to be relative to oak wood, and I believe you can just leave that at 1 unless you want your wood to be super strong. I'm pretty sure every single wood in the game uses a factor of 1 by default, but I suppose you can change that. We're going to go ahead and press create wood pack. Now, I've actually never used this before, but you can see up here it's going to automatically generate leaves, logs, wood, planks, stairs, slab, fences, fence gate, pressure plates, buttons, recipes, and tags for all of these woods in just a few clicks. And just like that, literally all of our wood is good to go, and we already have recipes for all of it. Mcreator makes it incredibly easy. Now, if you do want to tweak these textures around a little bit, you can come down here into the resources tab and of course open these textures and change them up however you want. And this feels like a great opportunity to tell you one of my favorite tricks when making a mod, and that is to find all of the vanilla textures that Minecraft uses so that you can reference them, recolor them, or change them up and really make sure that your mod fits with the vanilla theme. So let's say that we want to change this leaf texture here to just be the oak texture, but retextured with this purpley color. What we're going to do here is come into our search bar down here at the bottom left, and we're going to search %app_data%. This may be familiar to you if you've ever done modding before. We're going to open our .minecraft folder and scroll down to versions. Now, in here, it's going to show you every single version of Minecraft that you have ready to go on your system. What you need to do is come to whichever version you prefer or whichever version you have run on and played the most recently. So, for example, if I open, let's say, the 1.20.1 folder, you'll notice I have a JSON file and an executable jar. However, if I open 1.20.1, or excuse me, 1.21.1, which I have not played on, you'll notice I am missing that executable jar file, and that is what we need. So if you open the folder of the version you want and you can't find it, just open the Minecraft launcher down here, launch that version very quickly, close it all out, and that jar file should be automatically populated into your folder. However, we're going to come back into 1.20.1 and then right click on this. Now, if you have a program like WinRAR or 7-zip installed, you will be able to open this using WinRAR or 7-zip. Unfortunately, you will need these programs. It might give you this licensing thing, but you can just close that out. These are free programs that you can download online. And then if you come in here to the assets folder, Minecraft, textures, this is all of the textures that Minecraft uses in the vanilla game. What I would recommend doing is just taking this textures folder, dragging it and dropping it right onto your desktop so you have access to all the vanilla folders without having to go through this whole process every time. I said folders, vanilla textures. However, let's say that we didn't want to do that. We just wanted to drag our leaf texture in here. Well, that is a block texture, and we said we wanted the oak leaves, so we're just going to scroll down to where we see oak. This is sorted alphabetically for your convenience, so then you can scroll up. We have oak, oak planks, oak saplings, oak log, oak leaves. We can click, drag and drop the oak leaves in here, import them as a block item. And you'll notice that right here, we have our vanilla oak leaves texture. Then all we would have to do to move the colors over is use our color selector here, copy and paste this color code, paste it into here like so, and then click on the bucket item. Change the threshold here to 1, not 0, and then check fill globally. And if we click on this color right here, you'll notice that whole color gets changed to this new version. Now we can make this a little bit darker, say right there. Click on this next one right here, make it a little bit darker yet again. Click on this next one right here, make it a little bit darker yet again. Click on this next one right here, and suddenly our mythic leaves texture looks exactly like the oak leaves texture, but just recolored. I already closed it down. All you'd have to do once you do it is do save as new texture, save it as a new block texture, and you're good to go. But for the sake of this tutorial, we're not picky, so we're just going to go ahead and delete this vanilla texture and use the ones that Mcreator has provided for us. So we have all of our necessary textures and items here, except you'll notice that we don't have any stripped log variants. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this basic log and we're going to duplicate it and call it mythic log stripped. Now we have gotten a little bit ahead of ourselves because of course we don't even have the texture for the mythic log stripped, and here is a perfect example of when you can use your vanilla textures. So open up your vanilla textures folder again. I'm still in WinRAR, but if you drag and drop onto your desktop, you can just open it very quickly, and we're going to look for the oak log stripped texture. It's probably under stripped oak log because Minecraft doesn't sort things the way you would want them to. They just have a traditional naming convention the way you would expect it to be named. So if we scroll down here, we'll see stripped, and then we have stripped oak log, as well as stripped oak log top. Let's go ahead and drag both of these textures onto here. You may notice that when you drag and drop, it says operation failed, but you'll notice it didn't actually fail, so you can just ignore that. We're going to go ahead and drag and drop this next one. It's going to give me another notification saying that it failed, but we are, of course, good. And now we're going to do that same recoloring trick that I showed you from before into this stripped oak log. Now I would recommend pulling colors from your log top texture here. You'll notice that this border is a bit darker than the inside because it is bark, but if we kind of color select the lightest colors in here and move out to the darkest, or the darkest and move into the lightest, then we can copy and paste them onto here and it should all match up perfectly. So I'm going to catch you once I've done that. All right, and there we go. And you may notice that some of these texture differences are incredibly subtle. For example, you may not even be able to tell that this texture right here is different than this texture right here. And, you know, this texture right here is different than this texture right here. They are incredibly subtle. So if you want to make them more stark or different or switch up the colors, absolutely feel free to do so. At the end of the day, this is your texture, your wood, and you should make it look however you want it to. But with this texture changed over, we're going to go ahead and save as a new texture because it's currently called stripped_oak_log. And you can really name it whatever you want. Personally, in my mod, I tend to call these things like mythic oak log stripped, just because that's the naming convention I prefer. However, we're going to stick with the vanilla naming convention for now and call this stripped_mythic_log. We can then come in here and delete our default oak one because we do not need it. And, you know, we could recolor the entirety of the stripped oak log here. But instead, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to come in here to our regular oak log top and copy and paste some of these darker shades, such as this one right here, and then use our bucket fill once again using 1.3 on the global, and kind of bucket fill. Oops, I switched back to our pen because I'm silly. There we go, just like so, and kind of make this border also a little bit softer. And then just like that, you can see that we have our stripped oak log top. So I'm going to save this as a new texture yet again. I'm going to call it stripped_mythic_log_top. There we go, just like so. We can save that texture, and then we can delete our vanilla one right here from the oak. So there we go. Now we have our stripped textures as well. So then we can come back in here to our mythic log stripped, open it up, close out all of these textures. Now you could click on them and change them manually, but because the majority of them are the stripped oak side, if we close all of them and open the left and then click this texture, it'll actually populate all of them. And then we only need to change this top one and this bottom one right here. Now, it already has log rotation by default because, of course, we duplicated this from our mythic log, which was made for us by Mcreator. So pretty much all of these settings should be good to go. Mcreator knows what it's talking about. Of course, if you have your own custom creative inventory tabs for your mod, you can add these blocks to your custom creative inventory. Just remember that all of these automatically generated blocks will have to do that. And then, of course, because this is the stripped version, we have to come up here to name and renamed it to stripped mythic log. Go ahead and save the mod element and we should be good. Let's go ahead and duplicate it one more time and do the same thing for our mythic wood right here. Now, our mythic wood stripped needs a recipe, but our mythic log stripped doesn't have one. So let's go ahead and add a recipe for our mythic wood stripped, and we're going to call it mythic wood stripped recipe. And then we're going to click on any of these corners here, pick our mythic log stripped, which is right up here. Don't be fooled by the fact that it looks like a regular mythic log. There's currently a bug in Mcreator for when you duplicate an item, it temporarily looks like the item you duplicated and its texture does not update in the little block selector screen here, but this, we can tell by the name, is what we want. And then a little cool tip for you guys: instead of having to come in here and select it again, although it wouldn't be too hard, we can just, oh, I keep pressing use tag. We can actually middle mouse button right here, drag it over and down, and just like that, we now have mythic log stripped in every single one of these things, and that's going to give us our mythic wood stripped, which if you look very closely, you'll notice looks like our mythic log stripped because that's what we duplicated it from. There we go. Let's up this to 3 and then save. Perfect. So now we can craft our mythic wood with our mythic wood recipe. However, you may be wondering, how are we supposed to get this mythic log stripped in the first place? We want to make sure that our log strip procedure mirrors how you strip logs in vanilla Minecraft. So I've loaded up a regular old world here, and we're going to start stripping logs just to see exactly how this works so we can mirror our procedure accordingly. Now, if we come over here, you're going to say, it's pretty obvious. If you right click on a log, it strips it, right? Well, that's true. But what happens if you put the axe in the offhand? Does it still strip? Yes, it does. So that is functionality we are definitely going to have to add. Now we are in creative mode, but what if we're in survival mode? Does it damage our axe when we strip a log? Yes, it does. It seems like durability is taken from our axe every time we strip a log, so that is another piece of functionality that we are going to have to make sure that we add. However, what happens when we put something else in our offhand? Does our offhand have to be empty for the stripping logs to work? Let's try it out. Looks like seeds don't affect it. Looks like a bow does not affect it. However, when we put a shield in our offhand, you'll notice that we default to blocking with the shield and we are unable to strip our wood. So that is another little piece of functionality we're going to have to be aware of. Now, what happens if we switch it around? Put our axe in our offhand and our seeds in our main hand, and we try to right click, we can't do it. With the bow, it defaults to the bow, and with the shield, of course, we use the shield again. So it looks like we are only able to strip with the axe in our offhand if our main hand is empty. What if it has a block in it? We just place the block. So indeed, it only works if our main hand is empty. Now, as far as I am aware, these are all of the little stripped log mannerisms and unique things that I have discovered. However, if I'm missing any little behavior when trying to strip a log, whether it's, how it behaves in your main hand and your offhand based on what you're holding, etc., please let me know and we will work on it. So let's come back to our procedure right here and let's make sure that we've got all that functionality added. So the first thing we need to do is determine whether or not the player is holding an axe, because right now, this procedure is triggered every time the player right clicks on the mythic log. So mythic log right clicked on, what do we do? First thing we need is a flow control for if, and we're going to test what is in our player's main hand and what is in our player's offhand. Now there are a number of different types of axe in the game. So while you may be tempted to originally go into logic and pick is item specific item using the Minecraft components here, that's really not going to work well because you're going to have to check every single type of axe in the game. However, what we can do instead is reference a tag. So if we come into item procedures here and open up data, one of the first options is provided item stack, which in this case is going to be the item in the player's main hand, tagged as Minecraft axe. Excuse me, it's axes, plural. So all tools are going to be that way. Pickaxes, swords, axes. So tagged as Minecraft axes. That's perfect. So if the player is holding an axe, any type of axe, in their main hand, we need an OR value here. So we're going to go into logic, check the equals, change that to OR. And personally, I like to have external inputs on my OR values. So we can right click and change that to external. So if they have a axe in their main hand, or they have an axe in their offhand, as you can see right here, but that's not it, is it? There's some more conditions that we need to add here. If it's in their offhand, we need to make sure that their main hand is empty. So it's going to be if item in main hand is axe, or item in offhand is axe, and here's where we can use our logic equals. Item in main hand is Minecraft components empty. You can also just search all of these values up here at the top to find anything you're looking for. I'm just pretty familiar with where they are in here, but if you're not as familiar, feel free to search up here. Then we can delete this right here. So now, if they are holding an axe in their main hand, or they are holding an axe in their offhand and their main hand is empty, but that's also not the only thing we need to check, is it? We need to make sure that they're not holding a shield in their offhand when holding an axe in their main hand. So we need another and check up here. We can delete this right here, check that their main hand is holding an axe, delete this offhand, delete this main hand, duplicate this offhand. We're not checking that it is empty because it can hold some items. We need to make sure that it is not a shield. So a specific item, and then we also need to come in here to logic and add not, and then do shield, just like so. So if they're holding a main hand and they do not have a shield in their offhand, or if they're holding it in their offhand and their main hand is empty, then we want to strip the log. So what we're going to do is come up here into block procedures, select actions, and then we are going to replace block at XYZ with our new mythic log stripped variant right here. We can keep its state, we can keep its NBT inventory. None of this really matters quite yet because, I mean, honestly, these logs don't have state or NBT inventory, so you can keep this checked or you can uncheck it. It really doesn't matter. I would say because we don't actually want it to do these things, having it unchecked is probably the best practice. But there we go. This should be all the functionality we need for our logs. So let's go ahead and save this procedure and then relaunch the game and see if that functionality is working for our new mythic logs. So here we are. We have our mythic wood and our mythic logs. And if we right click on the log, you'll notice it gets stripped. However, first, you'll notice there was no sound. But when we strip these logs, it makes a nice stripping sound. And when we strip these logs, it damages our axe. But when we stripped this one, it did not damage our axe. Plus, if we try to strip the wood here, nothing happens. So it looks like we're still missing a little bit of functionality. Let's go ahead and add that now. So let's come back in here, open our mythic log right-clicked procedure, and whenever we successfully replace the log with the stripped variant, we're going to want to come into world procedures, action, and play sound, which is right here. And if we come in here and search strip, we can do item axe strip, level 1, pitch 1 of category block, as this is a block sound. You might think we want to do damage procedures, but this is player or entity damage. We want to come into item procedures and do actions, and then there is deal 1 damage to blank provided item stack. Now there is no provided item stack. It's either going to be the item in the main hand or the item in the offhand. So we're actually going to need another if value here to figure out what exactly is going on. So we don't need the and because we've already verified that it is working properly. However, if it is in the main hand, then we deal 1 damage to the item in the main hand. Else, we know it is in the offhand, so we don't need an else if. We can just deal 1 damage to, let's break that out and copy paste this, the item in the offhand. So we want to come up here, search creative. There is a handy dandy tool right here that says has entity creative mode enabled. So we just add 1 more flow controller right here, drop this in there, and then add a logic not. So if they are not in creative mode, then we check where their axe is and we damage it. Hey, Future Ace here. I've actually discovered some problems, so I'm interjecting. Sorry if this is a little bit abrupt or it doesn't flow with the rest of the video. However, I have discovered an issue here. So this is using the mythic log right-clicked on trigger, but if you use this trigger, it creates other issues. So we are not going to be able to use this trigger at all when handling our stripping procedure. So go ahead and take those off of your logs right here. Open up one of your mythic logs right clicked on triggers. If you want, you could duplicate it and rename it to something like mythic wood stripping procedure or mythic stripping procedure or wood stripping procedure or anything like that. But we're going to use what's called a global procedure. So in here, we're going to come and then up here at the top, this is going to be a global trigger, and this is going to trigger whenever any block is right clicked on. So it's going to say player right clicks block. And then now we also need to detect whether the block they are clicking on is the block that we want. So basically what we need to do is we can come here and take an and clear out the ands that we have so far, drag and drop this right here. And what we are going to do now is basically test to see what block they are clicking on. So what we really should do is use a tag. So we should use data is get block they are clicking on tagged as, which I believe is down here. Yep. And instead of doing a select block here, it is going to be data just get block at XYZ. And if it's tagged as Minecraft logs, then we are good to go, and we're going to keep checking the rest of this. Now, this is going to handle our wood and our logs, so we need another flow control down here that is if, else, if. And for every single type of wood that you have, I would recommend putting them all in one procedure, but you can have separate procedures if you want. It really doesn't matter. So this is going to check first and foremost if it is tagged as a log and they are holding the axe and whatnot. And then it's going to check if it is the proper log. You don't have to do is tagged as logs. You could have your own custom tag for your own custom woods if you want, but for us, this is going to work just fine. And then we're going to come in here to logic and do is same block as. And we're going to check that the block at XYZ is the same block as this log. Well, this is actually, excuse me, this is our stripped log, and we don't want it to be our stripped log. We want it to be our normal log. But if that is the case, then all of that code is good to go. Else, we want to come down here, and if it is our wood, then we want to do pretty much all of this same stuff, but we want to check for wood. So I do apologize for all of the confusion and all the stuff like that. Hopefully this isn't too jarring. But basically, for your stripping wood procedures and how you want to handle it, this is exactly how it should be handled. So let's real quick run through what is happening here. We have a global procedure. Whenever a player right-clicks on a block, we check if that block is tagged as logs, or is the specific logs that we want, or is tagged as whatever you want. You can really handle this however you want. Just make sure that you're checking it is the blocks you are, that you need to check for. And if they have these values right here, the item in their main hand is an axe, and the item in their offhand is not a shield, or the item in their offhand is the axe, and their main hand is empty, then if the block is this type of log, our standard log, then we're going to strip that log, play the sound, and if they're not in creative, we're going to deal damage to the axe. And if it is the wood, we're going to strip that wood, play the sound, and if they're not in creative, then we're going to deal damage to the axe. So that is pretty much going to handle that flawlessly and be good. So back to the tutorial. Hopefully this is a seamless transition, but probably not. So what we're going to do here is now we're going to make it so that our mythic leaves drop the proper items, because if we destroy our mythic leaves as of right now, they will drop themselves no matter what we destroy them with. They will not drop sticks, apples, etc., saplings, or anything like that. They will always drop themselves no matter what we destroy them with. So in order to change that, come in here to your mythic leaves, go into properties, and click custom loot table. We are going to use a custom loot table for our drops, and then we're also going to have an additional harvest condition, but we'll get to that in just a moment. So for now, leave that as a custom loot table. Now, leaves are also able to be destroyed by the hoe. I guess that by default, the tools up here that allow you to quick create a wood set don't set this to hoe. So you should change the tool able to destroy it right here to hoe and click the loot table right here. Now, if we click our question mark right here, it will tell us exactly what our loot table needs to be called in order for it to work. That is blocks/mythic_leaves. So we can go ahead and save our mod element here, add a new loot table here. I'm going to call this mythic leaves loot table, just like so. And up here, we need to make sure that the loot table registry says mythic_leaves, just like so, of the mod namespace. So that's blocks/mythic_leaves. Let's open our mythic leaves one more time, click on the question mark, and double check that. That says blocks/mythic_leaves, blocks/mythic_leaves, and it even tells you that it has to be in the mod namespace and type block. So all of that matches. If it doesn't match, this will not work. However, it matches, so we're good to go. So this first loot table is, or loot table pool, is going to be for our leaves themselves. So whenever they are destroyed with Silk Touch, we want them to drop themselves, just one. So the count is always max and minimum of 1, guaranteed entry weight. It is not going to be affected by fortune, no explosion decay, and it is only going to be with Silk Touch. Now we need to add another loot table that only triggers without Silk Touch, and this is going to be the loot table that is called whenever the leaves are destroyed without using Silk Touch. So in order to help us out here, I have the Minecraft wiki open and I have searched for leaves. Now you'll notice over here that all of these things kind of match with the values of our leaves in Mcreator. If we were to go to our leaves, you'll notice it has 0.2, 0.2, natural blocks, sound plant. And if you compare that to the wiki, you'll notice everything lines up and matches. However, if we scroll down to the breakage, this is the part that we want. This is a representation of the loot table that leaves have. So, for example, the sapling, jungle saplings just drop from jungle leaves, but any sapling will drop from any other leaves, or an azalea will drop from azalea leaves, and this is their chances of dropping. So we're going to have our saplings mirror leaves. We don't have saplings yet though, so we can add this later. All leaves have a chance of dropping 1 to 2 sticks. So let's go ahead and open up our loot table one more time and make this first opportunity be stick. And it is going to have the chance of dropping 1 to 2 of these sticks. And if we check our wiki again, you'll notice that it can be affected by fortune. So we're going to come back over to our loot table and click affected by fortune. Double check that you have only without silk touch here. That is very important. And we should be good to go. So no fortune, it looks like it has a 1 in 50 chance of dropping. So in order to create that 1 in 50 chance, we still want this entry weight to be 1. However, we want to add another pool entry over here. And in here, we want to make this air. Now, it doesn't actually drop air blocks. It just simply drops nothing. And we want to make this a chance of 49. So you'll notice 49 plus 1 is 50. So the sticks have a 1 in 50 total chance of being dropped. Now the air here, it doesn't really matter. You can have this ignore silk touch. You can have this only without silk touch. Personally, I like to set it only without silk touch. That is just a best practice in my opinion, and it is not affected by fortune. So this is exactly what this loot table pool should look like. So for now, this is good to go because we don't have saplings. So now we have our loot table right here, but like I said, we don't have saplings. So let's go ahead and make a sapling. We're going to create a new texture right here. Transparent texture is just fine. I'm going to go ahead and open up this and pull the wood texture right here. Now you can make your sapling look however you want. You can copy a vanilla sapling and recolor it like we did for the stripped log, but I'm just going to make a super basic sapling texture right here and not really worry about it because of course this is just a tutorial, so it doesn't really matter to me how our sapling looks. So here we go. It looks really bad, but this is a super basic sapling texture. We're then going to go ahead and save it as mythic_sapling. And there we go. We have it right there. So we can come in here and add a new plant or block. Now here is where we get something very important. If you are planning on having your trees mirror vanilla trees, that is, you want them to generate like pine trees, jungle trees, dark oak trees, azalea trees, oak trees, fancy oak trees, any of the vanilla trees you see in game, then you're going to want to add a plant item. However, if you want your tree to have a custom structure, a custom tree that you have built and designed yourself, then you're going to want to add a traditional block item. Now, for now, we're going to go ahead and add a plant item. I'm going to call this Mythic Sapling Plant. Although you should probably, I would recommend just calling it Mythic Sapling. I'm calling it Plant because later I'm going to show you how to use it using a block, and I'm going to call that Mythic Sapling Block, just so that they have different names and I can differentiate between them. We're going to go ahead and create this new plant and set it to a sapling type. For now, we can leave all of these things empty. Set this texture here to our Mythic Sapling texture. Press OK. All of these settings should be good. This is something we're going to set up in just a moment, but for now you can leave this empty. Bounding boxes, properties, all of this stuff is good to go. Just go ahead and save your mod element. Oh, it does say that we need at least one tree entity. It looks like we cannot leave this empty, so I'm just going to set this to acacia for now, but this is gonna change. So now that we have our Mythic Sapling plant item here, which By the way, if you chose to call yours Mythic Sapling Plant, you're going to need to change the name to just Mythic Sapling, but I want to leave my name different because I did that on purpose. We're going to add a new loot table here, add our Mythic Sapling right there, and then double check the wiki once more. So it looks like most saplings drop with a 1 in 20 chance, and they are once again affected by fortune. So let's come back to our loot table here, make sure that this is one sapling affected by fortune, only without silk touch, and a 1 in 20 chance. So let's add our air block drop right here. And we have air, and then we have 19, so that is a total of 1 in 20. This is not affected by fortune, and it is only without silk touch, and just like that, our entire Mythic Leaves loot table is good to go. However, you may have already noticed that this only works and will only drop leaves if it is destroyed with silk touch. But there's another way that the player can harvest leaves, and that is with shears. So we need to add that functionality as well, and luckily it's pretty simple. We're going to open up our Mythic Leaves, and like I said, we need to add a harvest condition. So I don't like the word additional here. I'm just going to call this Mythic Leaves harvest condition, but once again, choose a naming convention, stick with it, whatever makes sense to you, and you should be good to go as long as it is clear and consistent. In this harvest condition, we're going to see if the player is holding shears. So we need to come to flow control and check the main hand. Now, once again, you can hop in a creative world and test this stuff out and see when the player breaks leaves with shears, whether it works in their offhand and their main hand, etc., etc. I'm going to go ahead and save you time and tell you that because we are breaking a block, it will only work if they are holding the shears in their main hand, and it doesn't matter what is in their offhand. Whenever you're breaking any block, almost always, there might be some sort of exception, but I've never found one. You only need to check the main hand. And because there are not multiple types of shears, we don't need to check for a tag. We can simply check that in their main hand, they are holding shears. And if they are, then we are going to open world procedures, do actions, and we are going to spawn our Mythic Leaves on the ground. Now, whenever you are dropping a block or item, whenever you're dropping an item on the ground based on a block's position, that X, Y, and Z value is actually stored at the very corner of the block. And if you drop this item at that corner, you could potentially have weird clipping issue and have your item get flung all over the place, and it's going to look really weird. So whenever you're dropping an item on the ground based on a block's position, you should add a 0.5 offset to every value, and that will drop this item right at the center of the block and prevent that weird clipping issue. We also don't want to have any sort of pickup delay, so this is perfect. However, this is a condition. So in order for it to work, we need it to actually have some sort of return value. So if we are harvesting with shears, we are actually going to do logic and flow control, scroll down here to return logic, and then logic, and have it return false. Because this harvest condition here controls if our loot table is called or not. So if they are using shears, we have actually manually set up the drops, and thus we do not want our loot table to be called. So we drop the item manually and then call false or return false so that our loot table is not called and we don't get additional drops. However, if they are not holding shears, then we don't need to drop the items manually and we can have our loot table handle it. Thus we return true. So this simple little procedure right here is our Mythic Leaves harvest condition. We can go ahead and save that. Make sure that that populates our harvest condition right here. Go ahead and save that. And now our tree should be pretty much entirely good to go. Let's go ahead and launch this and make sure that everything is working properly. So the first thing we're going to test is simply that both of our log variants can be stripped. And if we are in creative mode, our axe does not take damage. But if we are in survival, it does. That is working properly. It makes the sound and everything. Let's go ahead and place some more logs, switch into survival mode, and try again. you can see our axe takes damage, and it takes damage again right there. Let's quickly make sure that it fails to strip the log if we are holding a shield, and as you can see, it does indeed fail to strip our logs. Let's switch this around and put our axe in our offhand, and you'll notice we don't block with the shield, but we do right click on it and fail to strip it. And if our we have nothing in our offhand, mythic logs don't work either. So if we have nothing in our offhand, it once again strips. Now you'll notice we still swing our main hand and not our offhand, which is once again a little bit of a bug with Mcreator, and unfortunately just something you have to live with Mcreator, but a tiny bug that is more aesthetic and doesn't actually affect gameplay. So just kind of something you have to live with when you mod with Mcreator. Now let's test our leaves. You can see that they do drop themselves, and I promise you, no matter how many I break, they will never pull our axes or our our sticks or our saplings or anything like that. They will only ever drop themselves because of our harvest condition. However, if we break them with our bare hand, we will have a chance of getting a sapling, as you can see right there, and it's 1 in 20. And it's 1 in 50, so we might not get some, even with how many we break there. But right there, you can see we get a stick. So that is awesome, and we are not getting our mythic leaves. Now, our final test is to give ourselves Silk Touch and see if it is working with Silk Touch. So we now have Silk Touch on this axe right here, and if we go ahead and break these with Silk Touch, you'll notice we get our leaves, and we will never get anything else other than our leaves. So without further ado, that's pretty much everything you need to do in order to code in your own custom wood types, except for one last final step. And that final step is that most wood types can be used as a fuel. You can see here overwood planks can be used as fuel in furnace, smelting 1.5 items per block. But if we tested that out in our mod with our woods, they would not be able to be used as fuel. So for any piece of wood item in here that you want to be used as fuel, you're going to have to do a new mod element, add an item extension such as planks. So let's call this mythic planks extension. You could call this mythic planks item extension. It really doesn't matter what you call it. Just choose a naming convention and be consistent. So mythic planks extension right there. Choose our mythic planks up here at the top. Check make this item fuel, and for every 200 burn time, you'll burn 1 item. So if we want to burn 1.5 item, we set this to 300. 1600, which is the default value in here, is the same as coal. So now it always burns successfully. So boom, just like that, our mythic planks up here now have a item extension, so they can be used as fuel. You're going to want to add an item extension for every single wooden item in here that can be used as fuel. And if you want to see if it can be used as fuel, just open up the wiki. If we come up here and search something like, I don't know, fences, we can figure out whether or not, even fence gates, right? We can figure out whether or not fence gates can be used as fuel, which it seems that they can, once again smelting 1.5 items. So you could pretty simply just duplicate the item extension here, call it fence gate extension, and then change the item up here at the top to be the fence gate. But you know, you guys, I'm sure just the one example is all you need, and I don't really care about having my wood as fuel. This is all just a guide, so do that yourself. I'm not going to show you the rest of this just to save myself time in this guide. Alrighty, so you have added your own custom wood, or not added your own custom wood, but now you want to add your own custom tree types using the built-in tree builders in Mcreator. So what we're going to do here is create a new feature. You're going to call it whatever you want. For us, it's going to be a mythic tree feature right here. You can add a 0 on the end if you want multiple types. So you can have 0 for the first type, 1 for the second type, 2 for the third, etc., etc. But I think we're only going to have the 1. So I'm going to call this mythic tree feature right here, and we're going to create that new feature. Now, if you want this feature to generate randomly in the world, then do not check this block. However, if you don't want it to generate naturally in the world, you want the player to be forced to, I don't know, find the saplings, or you want it only to grow from from sapling, etc., whatever it may be. Check this block and it will not generate naturally. However, we want this to generate naturally. It's going to generate with the surface structures, even though it's technically not a structure. Trust me, surface structure is what we are looking for. And then we can restrict it to whatever biomes we want. I'm going to restrict mine to plains just so that we can find our trees very easily, but restrict this to whatever biome you want. Even custom biomes that you have added would work just fine. Now you'll see over here on the left, we have tree features as a built-in option. We also have several different types of trees. The first type is an azalea tree, cherry trees, spruce trees, and then trees of specific types. Now, these specific types they have built-in versions for the, say, the mangrove and the pine and the oak right here that are kind of preset up. But if you click on this, you can change it however you want. So you can do pine, mega pine. Mega pines, I believe, are the 2x2 pine trees that you will find. And then if you scroll down, the oak trees have a couple of variants as well. You have oak, acacias, dark oak, jungle bush, which I believe is like the short little jungle trees, mega jungle, and fancy oak trees. I don't know why all of these are classified as oak, but that is where you will find them. So I don't know, for our mythic trees, I want it to generate like a dark oak tree. So we're going to close out the mangrove one, and we're going to have our dark oak tree right here. First off, we're going to select a dirt. You could make this rooted dirt if you want, or podzol, or coarse dirt, or whatever you want. I'm just going to have ours be regular old dirt. Select your trunk generator right here. That is going to be our mythic log, or whatever log type you want, whether it's custom or vanilla, it doesn't matter. Select our foliage, which for us is going to be our mythic leaves. And then if you want, you can add a specific roots simply by removing this and then coming over here to roots and decorators, and then spawning in, I believe the only type of roots we have here are mangrove roots, but you know, that's usually only used for mangrove trees, so we're just going to ignore that. And then we can select a height. Now this gives two options to create potential variation in height. So what we're going to do here for our first height is call this, I don't know, maybe 6 with a option to go 2 taller and 2 taller. So at the absolute most, you could have 10 vertical blocks of mythic wood. We are always going to place the dirt underneath of it. We are going to ignore vines, and we have no decorators for now. However, if you wanted to go add a decorator, you could add the click the cog icon up here, add a tree decorator, and then over here on roots and decorators, we can have an attached decorator that attaches on a side of the block. This could be a flower. This is actually mirroring the mangrove propagule, or the pale moss in the pale oak forests. That's kind of what this would be used for. You have a beehive tree decorator, a cocoa on tree, leaf vines, trunk vines, or a tree decorator replacing nearby ground. This is how spruce trees to replace nearby ground with podzol. I don't really want any of these for my default tree that spawns. Actually, you know what? I do want these. This spawns in the plains biome, and I want it to have the chance of getting a beehive. Now, if you actually look up the numbers, I believe it is a 0.002% chance of getting a beehive decorator in most forest biomes. So that is what we are going to set for our mythic tree beehive decorator in our plains biome. You really can change this number around however you want, and we're going to add a couple of placements, and this is also going to create some unique variety. First thing that I recommend is a with chance. Even if you do a chance of 1 and 2, it's going to spawn pretty frequently. So I'm actually not going to add a with chance, just to show you how frequently these will spawn if you do not add a with chance. So you're probably going to want to have a with chance 1 in something. Another thing I like to do is add a random XZ within chunk, just to, you know, make some variation. And then this is kind of unnecessary and should be automatically considered with the surface structures up here, but I'm going to add a height map placement here and do on height map motion blocking, and this is going to be motion blocking world gen. So this is before any leaves, trees, anything like that have been placed, and that is the height map it will spawn our tree on. Then if you want to make sure that your tree only ever spawns in your specific biome and doesn't kind of bleed out to the nearby biomes, you can also add a only if in this position. Only if biome here has this current feature. Now you can add whatever placements you want. It is completely up to you, but these three are the three that I would recommend. And you know what? I'm also going to add these to the forest biome just because. So this is going to spawn in the forest as well. Let's go ahead and save this mod element. And because that's spawning out in the world naturally, we should be good to test that out. However, before we do that, let's go into our mythic sapling, clear our acacia, and add our new tree feature right here. If you're not adding your own custom trees, you don't really have to do that. But if you have been following along for the entire guide and added your own custom trees, then feel free to go ahead and swap that out really quickly. And honestly, personally, I like to set this to 0 because I don't have secondary trees. So I don't know what would happen if you don't have a secondary tree and you set this to like guaranteed or something, if it just wouldn't generate, you know, from the sapling. I don't know, but I like to go ahead and set this to 0 if you don't have a secondary type of tree. Now, for the secondary type of tree, that's usually like if this is a vanilla oak tree and this is a fancy oak tree, one of the mutant oak trees, that's kind of how the secondary tree would work, but that's all completely optional anyways. So we're in a new world here. We're going to do /locate biome forest. TP to the forest real quick and make sure that our mythic trees are spawning. And here we are. We have them generating like dark oak trees, just like we expected. They are generating and spawning only on the ground, and they generate pretty frequently. So this is a guaranteed spawn rate. If you want them to spawn less frequently than this, then you can add a 1 in something chance, 1 in 2, 1 in 3, 1 in 4, etc., etc. And I think this is pretty good. We have a nice variation in height. Here it seems like we've gotten probably one of our shortest potential trees, as that's only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 blocks tall, and that is exactly our shortest one. I think our tallest one could be 10, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, almost, oh, 10, yeah, perfect. Yeah, so this is actually as tall as they possibly can get, and this is as short as they possibly can get, and that works out pretty well. You'll notice that some of those leaves actually seem to be decaying, and that is because we have not added our custom logs to the logs tag in Minecraft. So our leaves are, of course, decaying because they are not detecting any nearby logs. So let's go ahead and fix that real quick. So if you come back into your Mcreator workspace here, over on the left, you'll see something called element tags. You can add a common tag, Minecraft logs. Minecraft dirt you can add, but that is unnecessary. So we're just going to add Minecraft logs real quick. And then in the logs tag, we are going to open and search and add our mythic log right here. Now, it may seem weird, but technically this is not the only log. According to Minecraft, our stripped versions and our wood are also considered logs. So if you really want to mirror what vanilla Minecraft would do, you should add all 4 of these versions to the log tag, even if that seems kind of weird. But just like that, if we now relaunch the game, our leaves should no longer decay because they should recognize that our mythic log is a viable log to keep them from decaying. So unfortunately, most of them have already decayed a little bit, but if we kind of come over here into areas that we didn't load as much and hang out for a little bit, you'll notice that the leaves don't immediately decay like they did before because we have now fixed it with our log parameter. That's pretty much everything you guys should need to know. Oh, wait a minute. Here's what I've been looking for. We do have a little bit of an issue here. I thought that this issue might arise. You can see that our log or our tree generated after this tree did and tried to spawn on top of this existing tree. If we open our mythic tree feature back up right here, all you have to do is add a conditional placement here, scroll down, only if condition, remove the condition that is in there right now, open conditional placements once more, and drag this one, change the Y to -1, and you should be good to go. Now your trees will only spawn if the block below them is tagged as Minecraft dirt. And if the block below them is dirt, they will spawn. So you are good to go just like that. Now, the only other thing you might need to know is this mythic sapling. So we'll real quick run through how these saplings work. And you'll see right now we have our double tree, our dark oak type tree, set up as a single sapling, but it shouldn't be set up as a single sapling. It is actually a 2x2 sapling. So we can come here, select mythic tree feature right there for the 2x2 saplings, and we are good to go. Now, 2x2 saplings don't have the near flowers generator that allow them to generate with beehives. So honestly, the fact that this is a 2x2 sapling means maybe we should remove the beehive generator from this, but you know, trial and error. Feel free to test this out yourself and see what works, see what doesn't. You know, when you are modding, you can expect to come across bugs. Bugs are good as long as you know how to fix them. Real quick, let's say that you did have this set up as a single sapling and also wanted it to generate near flowers. Well, what I would do is duplicate your mythic tree feature here and call it mythic tree sapling feature. Just like so. You could also call it mythic tree sapling and then call the other one mythic tree flower sapling or beehive sapling, whatever you want to do. But I'm going to duplicate this, call it sapling, make it not generate in the wild, and remove our beehive decorator. Just like so. We can then go ahead and save this and then open our sapling, and then in our single sapling we can set our sapling feature. Now, the reason we duplicated this and made it separate was because we don't want it to have a chance of spawning with the beehive unless it grows near flowers, but we want our wild one to have a chance of spawning with the beehive, and we want our beehive one to spawn with a higher chance of having a beehive than the wild one. So because they all have different values, they should all be different blocks. So we're going to duplicate this one more time, call it mythic tree sapling feature 1 or 2 or whatever you want to call it. We're going to call it 1. You could call it beehive, whatever makes sense to you, and then we can set that there. We're going to want to change this so that it has the beehive decorator. Let's see right here real quick. And the vanilla trees, when grown next to a flower, have a 0.5% chance, or 0.05, excuse me, chance of having the beehive decorator. So that default value should be good to go. So if you just save it like that, our mythic sapling should be good to go right here, assuming that you're using a single sapling, but we are using double sapling, so we don't need any of that. So we're simply good to go. And if that's all you want, then that should be pretty much the end of the tutorial. However, if you are here because you want a custom tree shape, a custom type of tree using a structure that you made, then that is where we're going to pick up from right now. The first thing we're going to have to do is go into Mcreator or open Minecraft, save and quit the title, create a new world. I would highly recommend you make it a flat world. We're going to do creative, and I'm going to call it structures. And I would recommend just every single structure you ever make for your mods, save it into this world just for convenience sake. This is going to be a super flat world like so. And we're going to go ahead and launch it. First thing we're going to do is /give ourselves a structure block. So once we get our structure block, I like to place it in the ground right here. And then up here, we're going to name it whatever we want. We're going to call ours mythic_tree. I'm going to go ahead and do load corner save. You're going to see that it says structure saved as Minecraft mythic_tree. You can make that Ace's MC or excuse me, Ace MC Overhaul is the name of my mod. You can make that the name of your mod, whatever you want. Honestly, I would recommend you name it the name of your mod so that it is not confusing. So we're going to change ours to tree guide mythic tree, just like so, and then change our structure size right here to 10 10 10. Save, and then there we go. Now our bounding box has been prepared, and we have something right here to start making our tree. So you can make your tree look however you want. Just go ahead and build your tree using whatever materials you want. We're going to use the custom wood that we have made here. So I'm just going to make a silly little tree real quick, and I'll catch you when I'm done. So here we have a very simple, very derpy tree, but you'll see we have a lot of padding, a lot of extra space around our tree. tree, and that's, you know, really just not something that we want. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to destroy our structure block here and move it in a little bit closer. It's going to be lined up perfectly in this corner, just like so, and then we're going to change this to tree guide colon mythic underscore tree, and then do load, and it's going to load up that position once more. And now you can see right here to the right, we've got a lot of space to work with. That looks like 4 extra blocks worth of space. And then right here on the top, we have about 3 extra blocks worth of space to work with. So I believe that that first number, we're going to change over here to load corner. This one needs to be dropped to 7, and this one needs to be dropped to 6. Let's do save. You can see now it is gripping our tree pretty tight. It just needs to come down by 1 in the height, so we can drop this to 9 and do save once more, and just like that, our tree is perfectly enclosed within this area. Now there are a few more things that we need to do. The first thing we need to do is come down here in the corner, and then up here in the top corner, the opposite corner I should say, and then we're going to do a /fill command. So we're going to do /fill, do tab 3 times to get that coordinate, press enter just to save it, come down here, T, arrow up, space, tab 3 times, there we go. And what we're going to do is we're going to fill this with structure void, space, replace, air. Now you didn't see anything happen there, but if I hover, you'll notice suddenly we have structure void everywhere. And if I break this log, I can shift right click and place it in. And if I right click here and change show invisible blocks to on and press save, you'll notice that we have invisible blocks all over the place, and this is our structure void. If we break this log, you'll notice air renders in as blue and structure void renders in as red. Essentially what this is doing is when our structure generates, it's saying, hey, there's nothing here in this structure. You can feel free to, you know, it will not overwrite grass, for example. So say there was, you know, a hill over here and the tree generated like this, it will not replace this and create that blocky looking space around your structure. It just helps your structure seamlessly integrate into the world around them, so that is very important. Now the next thing we're going to do is actually tab up and kind of run that same command again, but instead of replacing it with Minecraft whatever, we're going to replace it with leaves. So whatever leaves you have in here, for us that is tree guide colon mythic leaves underscore leaves, there we go, and we are going to replace tree guide mythic leaves. Now that might seem ridiculous. You're like, hey, why are you replacing leaves with leaves? That doesn't make any sense. But what is happening here is these leaves, because they were placed by hand, are labeled as persistent. So any leaves placed by hand will not decay automatically. So we need to override that persistence by doing a /fill command so that the leaves are placed by the world generation or by the server so that they are not labeled as persistent. And now if this structure was to generate, let's come over here and spawn this structure in again. We can do, well, let's real quick come over here, save this structure, and then come over here and spawn this structure in again. You can see we have the structure right here, and if we do show load corner show invisible blocks on, you'll notice load corner show invisible blocks on save, it didn't place our structure void because we're telling it not to place structure void, but that's fine. Now we're going to break our structure block here, break out our logs, and just verify that our leaves are indeed decaying naturally on their own. I know we've got a couple of logs out this way. Yes. So then if we just kind of look at these leaves here, maybe do /game rule random tick speed and speed that up to maybe 3000. You'll notice as soon as I did that, they decayed. 3000's a bit fast. Let's do 300. We have another log here. And once I break that, all of these leaves decay naturally. So running that command did fix our decay problem, and there we go. Just like that, you would think that our structure is pretty much good to go at this point, but man oh man, getting this to work with a sapling is going to take a lot of work. However, I'll show you, to my best knowledge, how we can do that as easily as possible. So now that you have that structure saved, you're going to want to come in here to resources, go to structures, and then import a structure from Minecraft. It should be right there. If you need to click and drop down, you can. So this is going to be structures mythic tree. We're going to go ahead and import that structure right there, and then come over here, and then wherever you have your sapling item, this sapling is not going to work because it is a plant item. So because we are using a custom structure, we have to use a custom sapling using the block item. So we're going to come here and do mythic sapling block, just like so. Change this to the cross model, change this to our sapling texture. All of this should be good to go. Our transparency is cut out. It does have transparent parts, no connected sides, no rotation or anything like that. In our properties here, we need to make sure that you can walk through it. You can add this to natural blocks or whatever you want to add it to, and then set the sound to plant. For hardness, it should be 0.1, as it should be destroyed pretty much immediately. So 0.1 for the blast resistance and hardness, just like so. All of these factors, honestly, if you go to the Minecraft wiki and search sapling, you should be able to find values for all of these factors so that you get it set up properly. The only thing that we need to worry about now is under advanced properties, our bone meal properties, and then under triggers, our on tick update. Speaking of, we need to make sure that this ticks randomly. Then we can go ahead and save our mod element. However, you probably want your sapling or your custom tree to spawn in the world naturally. So we're going to create a new custom feature over here and call it mythic tree feature. You'll notice that I got the hiccups now. You may notice that I already have a mythic tree feature that I'm using our vanilla, the built-in Mcreator vanilla tree generation to do. So we're just going to call this mythic tree feature 0. And instead of using the vanilla tree feature generation right here, we're going to come up here to, come down here to advanced features, and then scroll up, scroll down. Yes, scroll down until you see custom structure right here, and then select your very own custom tree or whatever you have it called. Now you are going to want to offset it because as of right now, this tree is going to generate at this block, but placed over there. So the structure block here determines where the tree is going to be trying to generate. And believe it or not, these are the positive directions. So these are the negative directions. So, or I should say, to move the stem of the sapling or the tree over, we need to move it in the negative. Negative by 2, and that'll bring it back into here. So we want to make the offset -2 and -2, just like so. We can give it a random rotation and a random mirror if you want. However, if your sapling or structure is not perfectly symmetrical, as ours is not, you cannot give it a random rotation or a random mirror, because that will change and mess up our generation conditions that we are going to add. So do not give it a random rotation or mirror if your structure is not symmetrical. Now, you don't have to add the structure void to this list. It does it automatically. However, I like to add the structure void to this list just because I think it's a best case, just in case something went weird. So we're going to leave air and structure void in this list just like so. And then we're going to add some pretty basic common placements. You can make it spawn with a chance of 1 in something if you want it to be a little bit rarer than default trees. We're not going to add that because we want ours to be pretty frequent so that we're not struggling to find them. And then as well with common placements, we only want it to spawn if the current biome has this feature. That is another optional. Really, with these common placements, you can do them however you want. Although I would recommend the chance. I would recommend the only if current biome has this feature. I would recommend with random XC within chunk. And then I would also recommend that you come down here to conditional placements, scroll down, do only if condition blank is met. Get rid of that condition. come over here, drag and drop this, and double check that the block below it, the block at y -1, is tagged as Minecraft Dirt. Oh, and one last common placement is going to be a height map placement. You're going to want to place it on the height map motion blocking world gen. And just like so, your basic mythic tree structure check should be good to go. However, we need an additional generation condition. So I'm going to go ahead and save and keep open and add an additional generation condition. And this is where your extra code and extra work really takes off, because man, oh man, to make sure that your tree is not replacing blocks is going to be a pretty big ask. So here's what we need to do. When we generate the tree, we have 3 blocks upward that are going to be generating as logs. So we need to make sure that they are air. So the first thing we're going to do is come over here and set a local variable. This is going to be a logic variable, and we're going to call this logic variable success. And the first thing we're going to do is come into custom variables. We're going to set local success to true. And as long as success stays true throughout all of our checks, then we will successfully generate our tree. Else we will return the local success as false and our tree will fail to generate. So the first thing we need to do is check for our stem and make sure that all blocks located where our stem is are, loaded successfully. So I said we were checking the block itself. That is not going to be true. If we check the block itself that it is air, it's not going to work for our sapling. So we just need to check the blocks above it. But there we go. We are checking our sapling and making sure, or checking our stem and making sure that our stem has areas to grow, and that should be good to go. And I was actually confused, but what we actually need is if this one is not air or this one is not air, then we set local success to false. The next thing that we need to do is honestly check local success. So do custom variables, local success, just so that we don't run this for no reason. But if local success is still true, then we are going to run a big cubic check for our top part. So let's go ahead and open up our world again and look at our structure so that we can see the values of our structure. So our big main part of our leaves starts at a couple of blocks up right here. So this is what, let's see, if this is our default height, then this is y1, y2, y plus 3. And it is also 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 by 6. We already know that, and it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 blocks tall. So almost cubic, but not quite cubic. Now we need to check these. If we do the F3 menu, you'll notice this is our X direction. So 7 in the X and 6 in the Y and Z. I'm going to go ahead and write that down so that we can remember it. Now we also need to check from our stem here. From our stem, we need to go in the Z direction. In the negative Z direction, it seems by 2. And then we need to go in the X direction by -2 as well. So that all makes sense. And these are all values that we need. This is going to be pretty complex. Like I said, this is not an easy thing to do, although it is theoretically and technically possible. So now we need to create a couple of variables, a couple of number variables. Now I'm going to come in here. I'm going to call this X offset. I'm going to create Y and Z offset as well. There we go. And because our Y offset we've determined should already be at least 3, then we are going to immediately set our Y offset to 3. So we can come down here to our local number variables, change this to Y offset, and set this to math 3, just like so. And now, if you're familiar with Java code, what we're going to do is create a triple nested for loop sequence. So basically what that means is we are going to scan in a cubic area using our offsets to make sure that every single one of them is air, or a block that we are willing to replace if our tree were to generate. Now, this is most likely going to make your trees not generate that much, and it's also going to help you with your sapling so that when your sapling spawns, it's not replacing blocks nearby, etc., etc. So first thing we're going to do is probably come over here and create an element tag, create a new tag. I would recommend creating it in your mod namespace. It's going to be a block tag, and then you can call this mythic tree replaceable or tree replaceable, or whatever you want to call it. And essentially what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add air to this block because I am okay with replacing any type of air. This is what I think cave air and void air. It doesn't really matter with my tree when it generates. And I'm also totally okay with replacing any type of natural logs that spawn with my tree as well, just in case I'm growing these trees side by side. That's not going to matter as well, but that should be pretty much the only blocks I want my tree capable of replacing. So that is going to be pretty good to go. Now what we're going to do is set our other offsets accordingly. So we are going to come in here, come to our custom variables, and the first thing we have to do is check our Y offset. Now our tree, as we determined, goes up by 6, so we can add, if this is the 6th spot, we can add up to 5 spots to this for a total of 8, and then the base one is 9. I don't know if that made sense, but basically the maximum value of Y offset is going to be the total height of your tree structure minus 1. So what we need to do is wow, and then do a logic number value, number equals here. And while Y offset is less than, so custom value number here, Y offset is less than, we can just duplicate this number right here, and it's going to be 9, which is the total height of our tree. So while it's less than that total height, then we are going to set X offset to its default value or starting value, which is going to be -2. And then we're going to run another while loop that checks X offset. So while X offset is less than its maximum value, which we determined in the X, we need to move a total of 7 digits. So if we're starting at -2, all we have to do is add 7 to that. So that is 5. So while X offset is less than 5, then we set Z offset here to its starting value, which is -2. And then run our final while loop, and we can delete this set value right here. But we check that Z is less than its maximum value, which we said is only 6 away. So instead of 5, this is 4. So here we have our triple nested for loop, or while loop, technically, because we have to set our value outside of it. You can't really do for loops in Mcreator. So essentially what we're doing is we then need to check if this block is set in the tag that we want. So we're going to do data, scroll down here, and delete this part, and we're going to do data once more, is block at tagged as your mod namespace, which ours is tree guide. Well, really it's going to be whatever the name of your tag is, which ours is mod, which is tree guide, or you can just put mod, I believe, and it works just fine. Mythic tree replaceable, just like so. So if the block at that value is not in our tag, then we're going to set local value success to false, and then we're going to break our for loop. However, right now we're just checking X, Y, and Z, so we need to affect them by our offset. So I'm going to duplicate this just so we can get our plus value, and then going to delete both of these, and let's see, we need to duplicate this as well, and then we can duplicate this 3 times. So then we can do while X offset by X, and Y offset by Y, and Z offset by Z. And if the block at that location is tagged, then is not tagged, that not is very important, then we set success to false and we break out of our loop. However, if it is, so we need an else here, else, if it is, then we are going to set number Z offset to Z offset plus 1. So then we can do something like this. Change this to the front part, change this to Z offset, and do Z offset plus 1. So essentially what this inner while loop is doing is it's checking that it's first offsetting Z offset to -2. Then if Z offset is less than 4, we check the block at that location. If it's not in our tag, then we know we can't spawn the tree and we're good to just break out of the whole loop. Else we increase our Z offset until we have scanned all the way across the Z values. Here's a little demonstration of how that works using sheets. So if we do what I believe it was 6 in the X and 7 in the Z, so we can do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And let's go ahead and bucket fill these with like a light gray color. This is the area that we need to check. Now it looks a little weird and distorted because these aren't perfect cubes, but please just try to understand that these are squares. This is the area that we need to check. This is the area that our trunk is located. Now we have moved in the X, excuse me, this is the area that our trunk is located, but we move in the X -2 and we move in the Z -2. So we're checking this spot right here. Then, now I believe actually, if I'm not mistaken, I've got this a little backwards, but then with our Z value, says it's starting at -2, we're increasing it until it's 4, checking every spot along the way. So we increase it 1, check this spot, check this spot, check this spot, check this spot, check this spot. And once we've checked all those spots, we break out of that loop and increase our X value. So that is what we need to add right now. So once we've done that, we're done with this loop and we come down here. So then we need to come here and we don't need to check the block, but we do need to check success. So we do if local not success, because success by default is true. So we need to check if success is false. So if not success, meaning if success is false, then we don't need to set success to true. We just need to break out of the loop. However, we need to increase our X offset by 1. So we increase our X offset by 1, come back up to the top of the loop where we set Z offset back to -2 and run the Z offset again. So essentially what we've now done is after we check this first row, then we come up by 1, go to the beginning of the loop. So we jump back here and we check this spot, 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 and we check this whole cube, this entire cube in the Y area that we have selected. However, we need this to be a 3D cube, not a square. So we're going to run this one more time in the while loop down here. Get local success. If success is false, then break out of the loop and check Y offset this time and set Y offset to Y offset +1. So this loop right here basically checks in a 3x3 cube the entire upper area of our tree. And if it's all cleared, then we can successfully place our tree. So at the very end of this while loop, what we need to do is we need to return. Let's see, where is our return? We need to flow control, scroll down, return logic, and we need to return the value of success. So if we get through this whole thing, checking all those spots, and we never set success to false, then we know we're clear and we can return true, else we return false. So that is, I mean, while it's not too much code, it's pretty hefty and kind of complicated to understand. And these number values are all going to change based on the size of your tree. So hopefully I've explained it enough for you to understand. We can go ahead and save this mod element. Up here at the additional generation condition, we can go ahead and save that as well. And now we can launch our game. So I've actually checked 2 worlds now, and it does not seem that our structure or our tree is spawning at all. So it seems like our condition is always returning false. Let's check in on that. All right, okay, got it working. That should work. All that code should work. It was a simple typo spelling error. So you can see our tag, we accidentally put an R in the word mythic, so it says Mcreator, and I spelled it properly in the tag, so obviously it was always returning false because none of the blocks were ever tagged in that tag because the tag didn't exist. So I just added the spelling error to here, and now everything works properly. So that is the code that you need in order to make sure that your tree is not replacing anything. And it's also very important that you have that code running with your sapling type plant and block. Now, the reason why you can't use the sapling type here is because this is not designed to place whole features like that. So it doesn't use the generation condition when trying to place them, and it also spawns in very weird. However, what we can do now is we can get your sapling working, and then your custom tree is generating properly and working perfectly. So under these bone meal properties, we're actually going to start with on bone meal success. And essentially what we're going to do is create a new procedure right here. And whenever the bone meal succeeds, we are going to try and place structure. So place structure mythic tree right here, just like so, at XYZ. And I believe, once again, you should not do rotation or mirror or anything like that. Just save mod element, and then when this mythic sapling block is bone mealed, that should place the tree. Let's see if it automatically detects our condition for spawning or not, because it probably won't. So if we load into a single player world and just load it up to super flat, because that's really all we need here, and then give ourselves the sapling, which is going to be this mythic sapling block right here, we can then place it in like so. And then let's see, we need some bone meal. And then of course we need some diamond blocks, because what's it matter if we're not losing valuable blocks? Let's cover this thing in diamond blocks. All of these should prevent it from growing if it is using our condition. And you can see it is just absolutely not using our condition whatsoever. It's not even offsetting. So that is all stuff that we need to fix. First and foremost, I noticed in the block, it's using it as a 3D cross texture. So under block item texture right here, you should definitely add the sapling as a block item texture. So if we come down here to resources, texture files, open this, we can save it as a new texture item and name it mythic underscore sapling, the same as it is right now, but just saved as an item texture, so that when we come up here under our mythic sapling block, we can use that as the item texture, so we don't get that weird partially dark, partially light texture like what you see right here. We also need to add our own offset here in the X and the Z, and remember that is -2 in both directions for our structure. For your structure, it may be different. So we can do -2 here and -2 here. And just like that, our structure should now be placed in the proper spot. And we also need a bone meal success condition, so that it doesn't just bone meal right away and it is properly checking our values. So under advanced here, we need to call procedure and get logic return value. And the procedure that we're going to call is our generation condition here. And we can do flow control if and do a logic value here, do equals and external inputs here. And of course, I believe bone meal has like a 1 in 25 chance of working or something like that. So we're going to do a random, and I would highly recommend you look up exactly what the chance of bone meal success actually being on saplings, and you mirror yours with vanilla. However, I'm just going to assume that it's like 1 in 5 and set this to 0.2. So if our random chance returns successfully and our procedure is called and returns true, then we ourselves are going to return true. And actually, you know what? This is going to return true. So what we can do, just to save on code, is if our random chance is less than our value that we set right there, then we can do logic, flow control, return logic right here, and we can return the logic that, else we need a return false. So we can do logic here, drop this right here, and do false. So when we bone meal, it's going to give us a 1 in 5 chance of calling this procedure, and if it is okay to generate, then it is going to return the value of true, and it's going to generate, else it's going to return false. So here we are. First thing we notice is that our sapling item is now displayed correctly. Second thing we notice is if we click it down and right click it, it only has a chance of bone mealing successfully. And the last thing we notice is if we place it down and place some diamond blocks above it and we right click it, it should now never grow, because of course those diamond blocks are preventing it. However, if we have some diamonds right next to it, it's going to grow either anyways. Oh, and replace the diamonds. Okay, another interesting thing here. Why is it replacing our blocks with air if the structure should be structure void as it is here? Do we need to save this? Okay, so we've now saved this. Let's go ahead and save and quit and relaunch and see if our structure void blocks had simply just not been placed in yet. There we go. All right, perfect. Now it is working. So our structure void, I guess we were just working with an older version of the structure where our structure void had just simply not been placed in yet. So it was overwriting everything, but now we should be good to go. You can see that if we grow it next to our trees, it grows in just fine. That kind of mirrors vanilla saplings. However, if we have, say, a dirt block up here, we can spam away to our heart's content and it is never, ever, ever going to grow. And the very last step is to come back into our sapling block and then add an on tick update procedure. It can be super simple. What I've done here is done an if random some value. I do highly recommend you check the wiki and try and make it mirror vanilla sapling growth as much as possible, but this is all fine by me. And then another if to call the procedure, and if that procedure passes, then we place the structure. The reason I didn't do these in an and is because every time this sapling tick updates, it's going to call both of these values if I do them in an and I just felt like this was a very, very big procedure and it's going to put a lot of strain on the system. So if it doesn't have a chance of succeeding because of this, I just don't want to call this because, you know, the less lag we have, the better. So I think having this as a nested if loop is better than doing an if and. But that's literally all you need for your sapling tick update procedure, and it is good to go. Now, I've actually already edited the entire video. I completely forgot to add that part in the original one. So if you've really stuck around this long, this video ended up being way longer than I thought it would be. My longest tutorial by far, but we did have a lot to cover. So thank you so much if you stuck around and watched this whole thing. I really hope it helps. And once again, I will reiterate, if you're having any sort of problems or struggling at all, really consider joining our Discord. It is in the description down below. We have a fantastic community of mod makers that are always willing to help out, including myself. I am always willing to help out as best as possible. But until next time, peace out, take care, and I hope you are well. Bye.